Today's episode starts with a quote from a guy who's been dead for over a century, and it still cuts. Herman Melville said, "It is better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation." Now, I want to sit with that for the next 15 minutes because most of us have it backwards. We think safety lives in blending in. We think the risk is in standing out. And there's a story making the rounds right now, not about self-help, not about mindset, just a weird little news story about music that proves exactly how upside down that thinking is and what it's quietly costing the rest of us. Now let's get into it. Sometime in 2025, a band called Velvet Sundown showed up on Spotify out of nowhere. Four guys, classic psych rock sound, the kind of thing that belongs on the Road Trip mixtape from 1971. Two albums dropped within weeks of each other, then a third. Within about a month, they had hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners. By the time the dust settled, the number had passed 1 million. There was just one problem. The band doesn't exist. No members, no instruments, no late nights in a garage. The whole thing was generated using an AI music tool called Suno. A music AI tool called Suno, right down to the photos of the band. When people started asking questions, the project initially denied being AI. Eventually, after Rolling Stone pressed for answers, the people behind it admitted the truth. Their own Spotify bio now calls the whole thing an ongoing artistic provocation about authorship and identity in the age of AI. Now, here's the part I actually want you to sit with. People who study how Spotify's recommendation system decides what gets pushed into your Discover Weekly has pointed out what made the Velvet Sundown work. It wasn't that the music was good. It was that it was inoffensive, mid-energy, easy to half listen to. Nothing that made you stop and go and say, wait, what was that? High completion rate, low skip rate, but built. Now, whether anyone meant it that way or not, to function as wallpaper. Their own bio described the sound as the memory of a time that never actually happened. That's not an insult. That's the business model. It worked because it imitated something familiar closely enough to feel comfortable and different enough to feel new. And it was original in exactly 0 ways that mattered. Meanwhile, and this is the part that nobody puts in the headline, there are real musicians out there writing real songs that are weird and specific and genuinely theirs who can't get the same algorithm to look twice at them because their work has edges. It asks something of a listener, and a system built to maximize frictionless listening is not built to reward that. It's built to reward whatever disappears most easily in the background. And this isn't a one-off weird internet story. Streaming services have reported that a meaningful chunk of what gets uploaded every single day now is fully AI generated. Tens of thousands of tracks a day on some platforms. The Velvet Sundown wasn't a glitch in the system. It was the system working exactly as designed, just loud enough for someone to finally notice. So a machine that imitated a sound nobody actually asked for hit 1 million listeners. And a person putting something true and original into the world might release a song almost nobody hears. Melville was writing about authors in the 1800s. He was also somehow describing a Tuesday on Spotify in 2026. Here's where I want to take this because this episode isn't really about music and it isn't about AI. I told you that story because it's the cleanest, most measurable example I've seen of something that's a lot harder to see when it's happening inside a person instead of inside an algorithm. I think about systems a lot, not because systems are interesting on their own, because systems shape what we believe is even possible for us. A system isn't just an institution. It's any structure with rules about what gets rewarded and what gets quietly ignored. Your industry has one. Your friend group has one. Your family has one. Algorithm or no algorithm. You are operating inside systems that were built to reward the legible, the predictable, and the safe, not the true. And here's the thing I need you to actually hear. Most of us are doing to ourselves exactly what the AI band did. We are quietly optimizing the original, specific, slightly weird thing we actually think or want or are into something more palatable, smoother, easier to swallow. We round off the parts of an idea that might draw pushback. We say the version of our opinion that won't start anything at dinner. We build the versions of the business that looks like the successful one down the street instead of the one that's actually ours. Not because we're lying, because the system taught us that imitation gets you through the door faster and originality gets you stared at. I want to be really clear about something here, because this is where a lot of personal development content gets it wrong. This is not a discipline problem. Nobody needs to hear, just be more authentic for the 400th time. This is a systems problem you are responding to rationally. If your workplace punishes the original idea and rewards the safe one, you are not weak for playing it safe. You are paying attention. The question isn't whether the system is real, because it is. The question is whether you're going to keep building your own one life around what the system rewards or around what's actually yours. Now think about how this actually shows up. The person rewriting their resume for the third time, scrubbing out the unconventional path they took because a recruiter might not get it, even though that path is exactly what makes them good at the job. The parent at the pickup who has an honest answer about how their kid is doing and gives the easy one instead, because the honest one invites questions they don't have the energy for today. The person strolling past their own half-finished idea on their phone for the 100th time, never posting it, never pitching it, because the safe content always performs and the true content feels too exposed. None of that is weakness. That's a person reading a system correctly and adjusting. The problem isn't that you notice the system. The problem is when you stop noticing that you're inside of it. That part is in your hands, nobody else's, yours. Now, here's where I'm going to push you, because I think most people stop one layer too early on this idea, and where I do my real work. The conversation never stops at the first layer either. It feels good to say, I'd rather fail in originality than succeed in imitation. It's a great quote. It looks great on a wall, but say it out loud and actually mean it. And you have to face something most people aren't ready to face. Failing at the original thing might mean it actually fails. Not fails you secretly were right all along and everyone realizes it eventually, not a redemption arc. It might just end. The business might close. The book might not sell. The thing you made that was fully, honestly you might get a polite response and nothing else. And there's no guarantee that time vindicates you the way it vindicated the handful of names people loved. Quote. That's the uncomfortable truth underneath this whole conversation. We love the romantic version of the idea, the misunderstood original genius, because it lets us imagine our originality will eventually get recognized. That's not a promise. Some of the most original, honest work anyone ever makes goes nowhere, and the person behind it has to be at peace with that going in, not after. And here's the second layer, the one that stings a little more. Sometimes what we call originality is actually ego wearing a costume. Are you doing it this way because it's genuinely the truest expression of what you think and value, or because you want credit for being different? Those are not the same thing. And only you actually know which one you're doing. The right to follow your own path without needing anyone else's permission or applause only means something if you're willing to walk that path without the applause. Now, if you need people to notice how original you are, you haven't actually let go of the imitation. You've just changed which audience you're performing for. I'll add one more layer underneath that, because I don't want this to turn into another lecture about just being braver. Sometimes the imitation isn't ego, and it isn't even really a choice. It's protection. If you grew up somewhere that punished standing out, or you've been in a workplace, a relationship, a body that made being noticed feel dangerous, then blending in wasn't weakness either. It was a nervous system doing exactly its job. That history doesn't disqualify you from this conversation. It just means the work isn't stop being scared and go be the original tomorrow. The work is noticing which version of safety you're choosing today on purpose with open eyes, instead of running it on autopilot because it's the only setting you've ever known. So before you wear I'd rather fail original as a badge, ask yourself honestly, am I willing to fail quietly? Or do I only want to be original if someone is watching? So, okay, here's what I want you to do, and I want you to do it today, not sometime this week. Open your notes app right now or grab a pen. Write down one specific thing you've made safer than it needed to be in the last 7 days. A message you smoothed out before sending it. An idea you didn't say out loud in a meeting because it felt too weird. A piece of content you scrapped because you didn't think it would perform. A decision that you made the expected way instead of your way. I'll give you mine as an example of the size we're talking about. It's not quit my job or burn down my life. It's something like you wanted to tell a friend about how their plan sounds. And instead you said, that could work. Or you had an idea for your business that didn't look like anyone else's in your space. And you talked yourself into the safer, more familiar version before you even tried the real one. Small, specific, real. Now write the real version right next to it. The version you would have said, made, or done if you weren't managing how it would land. Then do that version today. Send the message you actually meant. Pitch the idea you talked yourself out of. Post the thing. Make the decision your way, not because it's guaranteed to work. We just spent 10 minutes on why there's no guarantee, but because every time you trade the true version for the safe one, you're practicing imitation. And every time you send the real one, you're practicing the only thing that was ever going to be yours. One thing today. That's the assignment. Now that's the episode. Melville's been gone a long time, but he left us something worth carrying. It is better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation. You don't need anyone's permission to find that out for yourself, and you don't need anyone watching for it to count. Go be the version of that you can actually live with. Talk soon.